All right, 3DMJ land. So I am joined today by fellow head coaches Jeff Alberto Nunez, and today what I want to talk about is the extreme sport of bodybuilding. I remember the very first time that I heard that. Jeff, you said it. It was, I think, in one of our podcasts, and I could almost hear like the youngsters out there, like my nephew, going, "Nah, brah, what's so extreme about standing up in your Speedo and posing? That's not extreme. You know, motocross, snowboarding, that's extreme." And I just immediately, I started kind of thinking about that. And I was like, you know what? There's a lot more to a sport than just the competition, right? There's the prepping, there's the training, and everything that goes along with that. And that a lot of times is even more extreme than the sport itself. And that is very much the case with bodybuilding. Because, yeah, when you get up on stage, I mean, that's posing and it's kind of more of an art, you know, more than anything. But when you're basically in a state of controlled starvation, right? I mean, what's the end result of starvation? Death. You can only go about 30 days without eating, right? You can only go about, 3-4 days without water or something like that. And you end up dying. And we've seen some pretty strange things that have gone along with prep. And this came across my desk just the other day when I was talking on a consultation with a client. We were setting up their prep. You know, we were going through the prep positioning phase, and they asked me about a couple of things, just random questions, you know. And it made me think, you know, that is an entire podcast topic right there. Is when you are forcing your body into a state that it does not want to be in our case, you know, forcing it to perform while starving, essentially, your body just kind of gives up at some point and weird shit happens. So, Jeff, I'm going to start with you because I remember vividly you telling me a story about you nicked your elbow shaving with a razor, and the thing bled like you were on Coumadin. It was like you were on mega doses of aspirin, and your blood was so thin that it was literally spraying out of your elbow. And we'll start some weird stuff with that, I think.
That was pretty gnarly. Yeah. Pretty extreme as far as the way I was dieting back then. This was like the mid to late 90s. And at that time, I didn't have any education when it came to nutrition. Like, I didn't know about macronutrients or any of that stuff. So literally my diet at that time probably had maybe 3 or 4 foods, and that was it. Like chicken breasts, rice cakes, maybe white rice, couple vegetables, but there was literally like no green vegetables in my diet for weeks on end. So, I mean, I didn't know at the time, but I was vitamin K deficient. So when I was in the shower shaving my arms, you know, because this, you know, crazy things we do as bodybuilders, we got to shave all the hair off our body so we can look really good. You know, I used to put Nivea lotion on my body back then every day just so I would look shiny. That's how vain I was back then. But anyways, I was shaving in the shower and like just a tiny nick on the elbow, like literally a size of probably a pinhole. And that thing was like a geyser. Like every time my heart would beat, the squirt of blood was coming out.
Like it's arterial almost.
I'm freaking out. I'm putting my finger over it, trying to, you know, and then I'm, you know, pressing down on it for like 30 seconds at a time. And I take my finger off and it would just start gushing again. So literally I'm coming out of the shower, trying to dry myself off. The towel's full of blood. I put a Band-Aid on it super tight. Eventually it stopped bleeding, but I had no idea what the hell was going on. I'm like, why is this happening? So of course I did a little research after that and figured out I was vitamin K deficient because I wasn't eating any type of greens or anything like that. So that's just one crazy ass story that, you know, and at the time too, like just super laser focused on a goal. Like that freaked me out a little bit, but I was still like adhering to the diet. But this time, like, okay, let me throw in, you know, some greens.
Is it?
But still, like the extremism was still there thereafter.
Is it?
You know, because I was just saying that was the prep. That was, I think it was 99, 98, 99, where again, you know, not having the knowledge that I have now, like literally like 2 days before a show, sunbathing without drinking water because I was trying to dehydrate myself to make myself look drier, to look tighter. And my nose caving in, like literally my nose was sinking in. And my ex-wife is like begging me to drink water. And I'm like, no, I'm going to mess my conditioning up. Like crazy stuff like that. So yeah, that's just a couple stories.
And at least with you, you were able to figure out like what the cause of that excessive bleeding was, right? I mean, how many times does weird stuff happen and we don't even know why? You know, I mean, Alberto, if I'm going to toss this over to you. You broke out in like some sort of a rash in your 2017 prep, didn't you? Did you ever even figure out what the deal was with that? And what's the story behind that?
You know, when it comes to Jeff's things he spoke of now, it's like those are obvious things that like we wouldn't do now, right? Like we know better. But even when you know better and you have all your basic things in line, like you said, it's pushing your body to these extreme levels of conditioning. Well, things aren't going to function as you expect. So, for example, in my case with that, it was just the immune system not being what it usually is. So it had this overreaction to, I still don't know what, you know. I read up on the statistics on going to the doctor to, you know, figure out like random infrequent rashes. And it's like usually they can't really help you. But yeah, I'd have to pop a Benadryl and then it was crazy, like within seconds, it would clear up, and then usually I can feel when like they were coming on as well. But yeah, like you said, Brad, like when you're in that state of, you know, you're walking your way to you're not flirting with death, but your body's definitely in like this panic mode, and all sorts of surprises pop up that you just weren't ready for. I think when I first started prepping, it was my assumption that it was going to be very similar to what I already do, that people who don't do this, like my friends who don't do this, like it would just be like a tier above, and that the hard part was going to be the simply, I guess, like trying to adhere when things are hard and having to abstain from certain things for a prolonged period of time. So I thought, when I thought of prep, I'm like, oh, well, I think that's it. I can do that. But all these weird things that can pop up, there's just it's like a never-ending list of what those things might be, and they differ so much from person to person. I wasn't ready for that. I had, like, no one really talked about those things, and you kind of figure it out over time what you're prone to, and like you find solutions to try to avoid those things. Like I'm sure Jeff now eats more greens than he was like back then. And when it comes to my rash, it just kind of disappeared. Like it didn't happen once, last prep. And I think like maybe just a handful of times the time before. I think a lot of that just has to do with finding gentler ways of pushing your body to those extremes. Like in my case, when it comes to the immune system, or maybe I just got lucky and next prep, the rash is back. But yeah, I thought I was just going to be hungry and lethargic. And that part, I was like, yeah, I'm ready for that. I think I got that. But there's just all these little surprises that, yeah, you're just not ready for. And they kind of freak you out. But thankfully, I think there's a few main ones now that people like bring up that it's like, okay, like expect this, expect that. And, but yeah, there's so many ways in which like our bodies like scream and freak out to us when we are like pushing hard over the course of a prep.
Yeah, and you know, the thing that I am seeing more and more frequently that I still haven't quite figured out the solution to is like sleep eating. That one to this day has got me baffled because I'll think that I have it figured out. Let's push a little bit here, and then before the sleep eating becomes an issue, we'll back things off a little bit, and we'll diet break and hopefully kind of keep the sleep eating at bay that way. But it's so random depending on the person. I've had people where it's like, okay, let's just kind of go refeeds fairly frequently. And sometimes that will actually cause more sleep eating when in others, it kind of took care of it, And then in others, it's kind of like, we need to just have a 3-day super overfeed being in a surplus, a good sizable surplus. And then we can diet again for another 3 weeks. And that kind of tends to work for them. Whereas that same solution for somebody else, that 3-day of overfeeding will prompt more sleep eating. That's the one that's really got me baffled. And that manifests itself in a number of ways. Alberto, you've talked about a client that you had that had some pretty bizarre behaviors, sleep eating. Did you ever really nail that down at all?
Oh, the first time I heard it, because it's exactly what you think it is. It's like sleepwalking or like talking in your sleep. Like you don't remember a lot of it. Like it might be some flashes and you think it's a dream, but then like you wake up and you're like, oh, wow, I like wrecked my kitchen last night. So the first time I heard about that, I was just like, you're lying to me. Like as I read it, like right then after I went to go learn a little bit more about this topic and like whether it actually existed, and it does. It's just like talking in your sleep. Like you don't remember it. You're very functional as you unwrap things, you eat them. With this person, I think it was alarming enough where at some point we just had to call it. She had a good team of resources around her, and we all kind of mutually agreed that, okay, this was the best thing. But I haven't had another one since. However, there is a friend of mine who, this dude would like literally wake up at night and cook pancakes.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Now it's coming back to me.
Like make pancakes, like get the batter mixed right. Like in my mind, I'm just imagining him like flipping them like without the spatula. Like that takes some controls over your faculties, right? To do so. Yeah, and he would film it. He'd put it up in his story. He's like, "This was me last night again." He's like, "I can't believe I'm like making pancakes and I have no control over this." So yeah, that's just it. It happens. It's rare, but if go look it up and you'll see that it's like it's an actual thing. I have yet to hear like it happen to people who I guess are pushing at the appropriate pace. I think for some folks, it's like as much as you want to prep, this might just be out of your range right now or at this point in your life, right? So usually it's connected to a lot of like stress that maybe the diet isn't necessarily causing, but it's making you more sensitive to it. So, but yeah, that one is freaky, and a whole lot of people don't know that people get up in the middle of the night and make pancakes.
Yeah, because I've heard cereal boxes, wake up in the morning and half the cereal boxes gone, empty, sitting there open on the counter. Ice cream containers, that were not left out, that are empty, sitting out on the counter. Jeff, you ever experienced anything like that?
Not sleep eating, binges. Uncontrollable binges. I mean, I think most preppers end up having at least one over their career. I have yet to meet someone who hasn't like ate an abundance amount of calories uncontrollably. But yeah, nothing like sleep eating. I haven't experienced that myself. I think that's probably a little more rare. Like I haven't had any athletes, at least that I'm aware of, that have said, "Hey Jeff, I'm waking up with cereal boxes empty or ice cream containers empty, or Or like what my dad does, he eats ice cream in the middle of the night and there's always fork marks in there. And I know it's him because he had fork marks. He didn't use a spoon.
Yeah, as rare as it is, I can think of 4 clients, off the top of my head, that have experienced the sleep eating. It's just and prior to that, I had never even experienced that before. I remember when the very first client that I had come across that happened. I mean, he was actually he didn't tell me right away. He took the remainder of the cereal box, weighed it, figured out how much of the cereal that he ate, because he would only break into brand new containers of cereal. And so he would weigh the remaining portion, figure out how much that he ate, put that into his macros for the day, and then he would, of course, finish it off. That's the kind of extreme mentality that us bodybuilders go to when we're trying to get to these levels of extreme conditioning, right? But yeah. The first time I heard about that, I was like, "You guys ever hear of this before?" And Alberto's like, "Oh yeah, well, let me hold my beer."
Do you ever figure out why what's the reasoning behind that? Was it they're just being pushed too hard?
Yes,
they went just way over the edge, just a little too much, and
a little too much, a little too long, a little too much, a little too long. Because almost all these cases, you were pushing really hard, And I, like Berto said, I think it's just kind of some people are more sensitive to it than others, because usually when we have them in a surplus, and things are a little bit more normal and the body's less sensitive and fragile, it goes away, It's only under the dieting circumstances that I've experienced it before. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that they're not dieting and they have it. It's usually kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where they have this obsession over food, and they get up and eat like whole boxes of pizza and things like that. But in my cases that I've experienced, it's when we start dieting and they're in that deficit. I feel like it's just like any other adaptive response of the body. It's starving. You're not letting it eat. It's going to find a way to make you survive, to help you to survive. How about you, Bert? Have you kind of nailed that down at all, or have any more clarity on that?
No, but I think it's kind of on the same timeline or gradient as binging issues, because anyone who's had issues with that will tell you that it legitimately feels like it's not me that's doing that. I have no control. And I think for a lot of folks, either they haven't been there, or I guess they've done this enough, but it's never happened. A host of other reasons, and that's kind of besides the point. But it's something similar to, like, I think with like phone devices, like, we've all gone to the point where it's like, we need less of this, and you don't even realize it. Like, you're picking it up and you're like doing some mindless scrolling, and then like 15 minutes went by. So it's a similar pattern to that, only like obviously it involves food. But yeah, these people will tell you it's almost like it feels very similar to, like when you burn yourself, and it's like your hand moves before you even get the pain signal. Like, it's one of those things. And I would definitely classify this as items that would be like a standing 8 count for bodybuilding, where, we're there, like, are you okay? Can you continue? But it's definitely a red flag, where for a lot of folks, like, kind of like with the binging, like if it happens once, okay, like, let's try to see what we can do to prevent this in the future, learn a little bit more about the situation as a whole. But for some folks, that I would consider that one of those things where it's like, we're just not specialized to deal with that, and we'd have to outsource to someone else. But they're kind of the same thing. And again, like you said, it's like there are these like forces like within us, like this drive to live, and your body will figure that out. Whether it's, you pouring more bowls of cereal than you intended to, like during waking hours, or you making blueberry pancakes or something like at 3 a.m, right? So insane.
I'll say what's interesting is that back in 2006, you can kind of say my discipline and dedication might have been too extreme, because I ended up getting myself sick, because at the time during that prep, I was working at the auto plant, working anywhere between 9-10 hour days, commuting 3 hours a day to work, getting literally maybe 5 hours sleep a night, and dieting on anywhere between 1,600 to 2,000 calories, and doing an hour of cardio daily, like 6 days a week. And back then I was doing Mike Mincer HIIT training. So everything was like to failure and beyond. So just an extreme state to be in. And that was literally like a 10-month prep. But the first 5 months of that prep, and this was the year I met you, Brad. So when we met, this was like after I ended up getting myself sick. The first 5 months, I pushed so hard, didn't cheat on my diet once or anything, like just in a sense, like you can call it a perfect prep. I ran myself into the ground where one night I was going to bed and my chest, like I literally was feeling my heart skipping beats, and I was getting freaked out, and I felt pretty exhausted and tired. My ex-wife was like, "We need to take you to ER." I'm like, "No, I'm fine." I laid down and it wasn't going away. Like it felt like you could just feel that skip. It would like pause and then boom.
Yeah.
It would hit my, and it's just like, okay. So I was like, okay, let's go. I went to ER. So long story short, I was diagnosed with just severe fatigue. And literally, I couldn't do anything for a month. I didn't go to work for a month. I stopped training, everything. I just stopped. And my dad at the time, he was in his, I don't know, early to mid 70s. He had to come over and mow my lawn. Like that's how wiped out I was. And that was sad. And I remember after like a month, 2 months gone by, I started to get back into prep mode. And my ex-wife's like, "What, are you crazy?" I'm like, "No, I got a goal. I'm trying to, attain my goals."
And you know what,
And
Jeff?
I got back, but I toned things down after that though. Like I learned from just like, nicking my elbow with the razor blade and figuring out, okay, why was it doing? I was like, okay, why am I so fatigued? So I toned things down. And then of course, I met you at the show we did in Chico. And then I went to the APC San Francisco and won that. But I just kind of realized like sometimes like we can be so focused as bodybuilders to a goal. Like it can be too extreme. Like maybe having a night where I actually woke up and emptied out an ice cream container in the middle of the night, that might have actually helped me.
You just prompted a memory, because I remember when we were putting our Protan on backstage, that was I think that was only my third season. So that was probably only my fifth or sixth show. And I remember you telling me how much your feet hurt when you would walk barefooted. Do you remember that?
I didn't have any fat on my feet.
Yeah.
At the bottom of my feet, there was no fat, there's no more padding.
And
so it was painful just to walk without shoes on.
I remember you vividly saying, I have to have my flip-flops, my thongs, my sandals, because it hurts to walk barefooted. And I remember at the time, because remember, this was only maybe my fifth show. I remember thinking to myself, that's weird. I've never heard of that before.
That was an extreme, like I was so, like back then, just so dedicated, committed, focused, probably too disciplined, and not knowing how to pace. That's the big thing, was not knowing. Everything was just my foot on the gas pedal the entire time, all the way down. There was no pacing, no refeeds, no diet breaks, not even with training. It's like, hey, you don't have to go to failure every set. You could back things down or take an additional rest day off. Or, hey, here's a good idea. Why don't you just take 2 days away from the gym and maybe get into bed 2 hours earlier so you can get some sleep? So just not understanding how to pace myself. So again, it's like the extremism, like this, you guys know how this is. This sport can be super extreme. I even have those moments in my last prep where I was realizing like, oh, okay, yeah, I actually probably need to sleep.
Is
I
it?
need to probably back off things and pull back because, when you go through an experience like that where you literally can't do something for a month, like you can't even go to work, like that's not a healthy thing at all.
Well, and I remember when you started biking because all of the steps that you were getting in doing your 4 a.m. walks were giving you shin splints or something like that. Talk about
Severe
that a lot.
tendonitis in my left ankle. That was 2019 prep, where who would think like walking would cause an injury, but I almost couldn't get on stage at Muscle Mayhem. Like the day before, like I don't know if you guys remember, I could barely walk because I just ran myself into the ground, just like with so much walking. So you learn again, it's the pace thing. Like okay, I needed to push hard in order to get that conditioning to get on stage, but at the same time, I could have did it a different way. And that's what I learned. Like, okay, maybe it's like, let's walk for a week, let's bike ride for a week and just flip flop it. So learning how to pace things out. The extremism, like you have to, like I said earlier, Brad, like this sport is super extreme. Like some people don't understand, like the thing they're probably listening to, like, you guys are crazy. Like, why are you even doing it? You guys are talking hella crazy. But to me, it's no different than someone jumping out of an airplane. Like to me, that's crazy. Like I don't want to personally jump out of an airplane. I get it. It's probably exhilarating. Like everything they experience on the way down, that's probably what we experience with a prep. It just takes 6 months to do it.
This
right?
is.
But it's the same principles. It's understanding how to pace things out. And so, yeah.
Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez popping in real quick to tell you all about our latest video course in the 3DMJ Vault titled The Physique Photo Guide. It's a 40-minute deep dive into the importance, the art, and the skill of collecting visual data for bodybuilding athletes. So many lifters shoot themselves in the foot by overemphasizing the numbers on the scale or in the DEXA scan, rather than focusing on what truly gets judged, which is how the physique looks on stage. And even if you don't compete and are just someone who enjoys training and chasing aesthetic goals, you would also be served by taking the time to learn how to collect more valid data than simply relying on what you think makes you look good enough to post on Instagram. And nothing's wrong with sharing your highlight reel online, but what any true physique athlete needs is a private catalog of standardized, well-shot, and consistent visual checkpoints at a variety of body weights and time points throughout their career. And that's exactly why Coach Alberto Nunez created this course. So you have the tools and the skill set to make educated assessments about whether your training and nutrition protocols are working in your favor or not. The Physique Photo Guide is now the 23rd course in the 3DMJ Vault, which is our online learning platform of organized video-based education for serious lifters. You can become a VIP member to get access to every single one of those courses for just $25 a month or $85 per year. This means that you get this course, you're also getting the lifting library, the bodybuilding program design course, the advanced deload guide, the calculating your macros course, and many, many more. Head on over to 3dmjvault.com and sign yourself up today. That's 3dmjvault.com to get all access. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the rest of the show.
The direction I kind of want to go with this is that you can do everything right. And things just, the body, people will ask me, they'll ask me all the time, well, what do you think about this? Why does this happen? I had that client I was just talking about the other day, after high amounts of carbohydrate compared to their diet. Now, I'm not talking high and probably what normal people eat, but we're talking 400 or 500 grams of carbs. Their skin literally ached from head to toe. Their skin ached for like anywhere between 3 and 6 hours after a high carbohydrate, high calorie feeding. Their skin would ache. And they asked me, they're like, I've asked so-and-so and I've asked so-and-so, and they all have their hypothesis. And people will ask us that kind of stuff a lot of times. And, I got to stay in my lane sometimes. And the thing about the human body is it doesn't need a reason. It just will do what it wants to do. And in your case, it wanted to send some sort of a pain signal for those high calorie feedings after controlled starvation for months and months or weeks and weeks and whatever. And this last season, I mean, we had a client, he's put it out there. He's made it public. Phil, he broke out in a head to toe rash that I think is still there, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, we had to work around it. We figured out our way to get him on stage and not have that rash show up with our Dream Tan solution. But I mean, I have to say, we did everything right. We went through the prep positioning phase. We got from the extreme high bodybuilding off season down to within reason, diet break there for a little while, started the prep, eased off the gas, put the gas pedal down, felt like we did everything perfectly. First show, everything's good, did well. Second show, he won his pro card. Third show, he made his pro debut. Conditioning's getting better and better. Everything seems like it's just going perfectly according to plan. Boom, head to toe rash. First they thought it was scabies. Didn't go away like normal treatments do. He swells up, the Benadryl helps, but just a total bizarre. I have never, ever seen that before. And I'm pretty sure that you guys had, because your rash would go away, if I recall correctly, with Benadryl, but Phil's it stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, it's like your body just kind of, you have every intention to continue to push, but your body just kind of quits. It reminds me a lot of two instances in my life. When I ran the 400 in high school, there was times where if I pushed hard enough, it was freaky, but it was interesting too. And you could just kind of see things get dark. And you're kind of controlling the dark. It's like, okay, I need to cruise. And then it would come back. And then you're kind of like, wow, redlining this way. But it was random. Obviously, when you're pushing harder, you're more prone to that. Or in more recent times, I got a tension headache, in the middle of, I wanted to break a 10-year PR in the leg press. I had the exact same model. And I'm like, you know what? It was something ridiculous. It was 40 reps with a certain weight. And I'm doing my thing. It's going well. I'm like, okay, this is going to be tough, but I'm going to be really pissed off at myself if I quit early. So, all that stuff is building up. And I think it was supposed to be 40 reps was the goal. And somewhere around rep 26, whatever burning I had in my legs just went away. And all I could feel was back here, just light up. It was like a cramp, but to some nerves back there. It was so I couldn't feel my legs. My body's let's focus on this pain real quick. You could only feel one thing or another. But I had heard of tension headaches happen to people when they're lifting, especially power lifters. But this was the first time I've ever experienced that myself. And I remember the weeks after, it took a good 3 weeks for me to not feel it, kind of built up in certain instances with certain lifts. And again, there was nothing I could do. I had every intention of trying to get to 40 reps. I thought I had a good chance. I was ready to go, and my body just said, nah, not today. And that happens with contest preps a lot. So sometimes it's like you said, you're doing everything right, and it just happens.
Your body just says nope. Yeah, that brings back a memory that I completely forgot about. When it was 2009 and I was getting ready for my pro debut, and we were in the last weeks, and my buddy Ron was just pushing me really, really hard in these cardios. In fact, there's that video that's floating around YouTube, 9 days out, I think it is, where he's got me doing this crazy stuff. And I remember I was towing him. He had a band around me, and I'm towing him. So he's trying to hold me back, and I'm sprinting, running. And I remember I panicked because I couldn't move air. It was like my trachea and my bronchioles, they kind of got inflamed and restricted, and air was not moving. And I started panicking. I thought I was going to die because the air, it just felt like you were breathing through a straw. but it was like my entire trachea. And later on, I found out two things. Number one, it happened when I was not in control of my breathing. Like if I just let my breathing just kind of go crazy and kind of do its thing, I think my body would just say, you can't do this anymore. You need to stop this and slow your breathing down. Because if I could kind of somewhat control my breathing, I could keep it at bay. And it ended up being bronchospasm. I had this condition of the bronchioles would just get inflamed, and they would actually restrict and make me slow down through like a panicking kind of one of those fight or flight experiences where it would make me slow down. It would make me not continue doing what it was that I was doing, you know? But yeah, when you said that, that memory came up that I completely forgot about until just then. And it's just a sign that your body's going to tell you. It's primary. I mean, as much as we want to build muscle and as much as we push our bodies to build, our body's primary thing that it goes to is to not let you die. And it's gonna just put the brakes on. It's gonna do whatever it wants to do to make you kind of submit so that you don't die. Its survival is what its primary, thing, its primary go-to is. And kind of where I want to take this now is, okay, you know what? Brad's 52 years old now, and he wants to prep. He wants to go through. I don't really care about competing. I kind of want to prep. I kind of want to go there and push myself again. It's been 10 years. The last time that I prepped.
That getting on stage in your Speedos is just a little too extreme for you now, huh, Brad? So I'm just going to prep because it's like I'm scared to get into the Speedo. It's too extreme.
But speaking of being scared, there's that little voice in the back of my head that says, Brad, it's been 10 years since you prepped, right? And knowing these weird things that happen, there's a little fear that's in the back of my head, knowing that these weird things happen and that I am 52 and I've got a little bit of a heart condition. I've got coronary artery disease. My heart still skips at times. The Cowboys barely won a game over the Lions the other day, and my heart was skipping and fluttering like crazy as I was watching that game. So anyway, the point being, I'm going to be doing this thing again, basically strictly out of desire to do it. But there's that fear kind of in the back of my head that's kind of saying, what's going to happen this time? Hey. So I got two of my fellow head coaches here, right, guys? I mean, I know we cross that bridge and we get there, but it kind of makes me think to myself, do I really want to really push hard? Knowing everything that we know, knowing everything that I know, diet breaks and setting myself up. I'm in a good spot right now. I was just I took down the calendars, because 2023 is over now, and I'm looking at my body weight records back in March and April and May, and there's 186 and there's 184 is this kind of trickling down, and now I'm kind of mid-high. I'm in a good spot. Like I could lose really easy right now, and I'm maintaining really easy right now. But at the same time, I kind of know where I'm going to have to go. And it's like, what is my body going to do?
Yeah, but you're not. Yeah, but this the thing is like you're an experienced bodybuilder, even though you haven't prepped in 10 years.
10 years. It'll be 10 years.
How many athletes have you prepped?
Oh yeah,
and more intelligently than you used to prep yourself back in the day. Like that's the thing is like we're pretty good at knowing where those thresholds are at. Like it's not about pushing harder; it's about pushing smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that as coaches we've gotten really good at. Like even myself with my last prep this year, 2023, like the only extremism in my prep was the basically the gut cut at the end. But I learned from it, right? It's like, okay, if I want to make the lightweight class next time, okay, instead of being 168, so 169 heading into the week of the weigh-ins, like let me make sure I'm actually 165. So that might be like better planning on the front end. Like, oh, hey, maybe I could start the diet a month sooner or 2 months sooner, or what have you. So it doesn't have to be so extreme at the end. So we're always going to be learning from our experiences, and we're going to know like where our thresholds are at. You know, where you don't have to like feel like you're dying, Brad. Like, you know, so, and that's the thing, like even Eric's prep, like, and Berto can probably speak to this better than I can because he actually was the one prepping him. But every time Eric's gotten shredded the last few times, it feels easier for him. Is it because he's basically pacing things a lot better now? Like as far as the actual pace, the diet, but the overall stress level too, just keeping your overall stress level lower than maybe where it was in the past. So maybe Berto, you can speak to those types of things.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of these things we discuss personally or with athletes, like they didn't see them coming, right? And once you prep, it's like, okay, I kind of know what to look out for personally, because there's that like broad list of like symptoms that are common, but there's going to be some things that are unique to you. And once you kind of figure that out, it's like, okay, well, I know that perhaps it's best for me to, let's say, continue eating in a social environment because I'm prone to like food guarding, right? Or I feel anxious eating in front of other people. So this is something that I can't, like, I'm going to make an effort to eat around those people in close proximity or at work, whatever, right? So yeah, with experience, you kind of know how what your body kind of defaults to when it is in that panic state, and you're just ready to, you're better prepared. You know, you hopefully have thought of some new ideas that can help you avoid those. But I think just being ready, like bracing yourself. Sometimes you brace yourself for whatever that thing might be, and it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen to the same magnitude. So I think with Eric, that was a big part of it. It's like, okay, slowly over time, he's learning what things are unique to him when his body and brain start to kind of malfunction on him. And it's like, okay, we look out for those things. We try to avoid those things. And what ends up happening over time, but what should happen is two things. I think one, you know, the way you structure things helps, but our bodies are also smart, you know, and like I tell people, like the recovery period, people tend to do better when they've done it a few times, because it's almost like your body has these like life rafts just ready for like when it happens. Like all the systems are in play. It's like, oh, we've gotten ourselves out of this. So every time you do it, it seems to be a more efficient process. Whereas, you know, the first time you get in contest shape, it's like, whoa, that took 6 months to feel normal again. And, you know, that timeline gradually over time gets better. So I think your body just gets better at like going econo mode when it needs to. And then you're also kind of actively playing a role in that with, you know, more up-to-date strategies that better fit whatever it is that you're prone to.
Yeah. And I mean, we hear that a lot. I mean, even Phil, his body clearly giving up on him at the end of his prep. The sign being, I'm going to break out in a head-to-toe rash that it's going to take you months to get rid of, right? He said the same thing. He's like, this prep is so much easier than the last prep in 2020. I mean, I dieted arguably harder, and it didn't feel as bad as it did in the last prep. I mean, we hear that time and time and time and time again, you know? And there was a few times when I had to kind of talk Phil off the ledge. You know, he was kind of like, I didn't make any improvements this year. And I spent 3 years building and I don't look any different. I'm like, Phil, just, you know, you're your own worst critic right now. Just put the clothes on, you know, let's take the cameras away a little bit and just grind away, you know. And sure enough, he wins his pro card in the WNBF, right? But I mean, I'm going to kind of be a little bit salesy here. That is the value of a coach. And I mean, Jeffrey, when we start getting there and we start doing the crazy shit that Brad does, I hope that you are ready to get voice messages from Brad, from emails, you know, that say, hey, Jeff, help me out here, bro.
Well, you know what's a good indication is when you start smelling people's food, then we know we're getting really close to getting shredded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's gonna. I mean, I'm full transparency, Jeff. You're hearing everything, because I want to make sure that we've got both brains on this. And Brad's starting to hawk up the protein bar after it's half eaten so that he can enjoy the flavor of it a little bit more. You're going to hear all that crazy stuff because I just want to make sure that. Okay, Jeff, are we good to push here? This is what's going on with Brad. Are we okay to push here? Can I push this way? You're going to be hearing all of it. I can guarantee it because you're going to be that brain and that coach that's going to make sure that I'm not doing the extreme stuff that we do while at the same time knowing when my body is giving up and when we need to back things down a little bit. So I hope you're ready, brother.
I got you, man. I got all my personal crazy experiences plus all the athletes that we worked together. And so, yeah, I mean, why do you want to prep though, Brad? Like, why do you actually want to prep? Because it is extreme, right? This is extreme.
Yeah,
like all these
it
things
sounds
that
awful.
It sounds awful. The things that we're putting our bodies through. So I mean, even questioning for you too, Berto. At this point, it's like, why do you want to prep? Because you're probably gonna be prepping this year too. I might even be joining you guys because I'm 52, gonna be 53. Like so Evan, Evan Godby. So if you're listening to this, because I know he'll appreciate this. He's like, you're gonna compete again this year? I'm like, Evan, if I take an extended off season, that's called retirement at my age. So it's like, for me, like it could be considered crazy prepping back-to-back years. I've done it in the past. Like I know what it entails, but a part of me wants to keep pushing.
And you're right. It's a super valid question. I mean, would you give yourself this advice 10 years ago? That's the thing is we sometimes say don't compete in back-to-back years. There's not enough time to make an improvement. However, in your case, Jeff, like you just said, you might not do it again, It's a case-by-case basis,
You asked me this 10 years ago, I'd be like, well, I'll take a season
Exactly.
off 'cause I'm younger. But now at this age, it's like, well, I got the muscle masses there, and mentally, I think I'm in a much better place now than I ever was in the past, like coming off of seasons. Because coming off of seasons in the past, it was a shit show. But now it's like I have more control over habits and things like that. So it's in a sense, it's kind of an easy transition for me. The only thing that is kind of holding me back is like I know the extremism it has on the people around me.
Yeah, good point.
Like I can handle like the diet. I can handle going for 10,000 steps, doing the training and, balancing that stuff out. It's just whenever you commit to something like this, it requires a lot of time and attention. And no matter how hard we try to balance things out, like you're still kind of in that extreme state of focus. So that's kind of the only thing I'm like, do I really want to do that? But anyways, this is not about me. This was my question to you guys.
Well, and
why do you want to do this crazy shit? Like, why do you actually, and here's the thing too, Brad, is you say that at your age, you don't care about going to like beating your best ever or anything like that, or getting more conditioning than you have in the past. But when you start getting in the middle of it and you're getting deep into it, that switch is going to go on. The Brad switch. It goes on and you're going to get super intense and you're going to want to go there. So now knowing like the level of conditioning that the sport is elevated to, there is maybe a little bit more sacrifice involved. So why do you want to do this?
Yeah, and that's a super valid question. And Berto, I kind of want to hear from you on this too. I'll just kind of go first, but like I said before, it's the prep that I want to do. That is the reason that I really want to do this again. It's been 10 years since I've done this. And it's the hard that makes it so desirable for me. because prep for me in the past, when I really get in that mindset, it's almost for me a part of my spiritual life. I mean, we know how spiritual I am. And that sacrifice, that hurt, that just pushing your mind and your body to a point to where most people are going to say, no, screw this. I'm eating that. No, screw this. I'm not going to train today. No, screw this. I'm not going to continue getting the 10,000 steps. I'm tired of being hungry. I'm tired of being low on energy. To me, that hurt, it's almost purifying in a way for my soul, you know? And I kind of want that right now. It's been 10 years since, quote unquote, I've purified my soul. And that purification, in my opinion, it helps you grow as a person. It helps you grow, and it helps me relate to my athletes better. It helps me to be able to relate to them better. It just makes me a better person when I do hard things. And I have not done hard things in a really long time. And it's time for Brad to do hard things. And that's why, Jeff, when I start getting a little bit crazy and I start thinking to myself, you know, I'm going to do this because I feel like that's going to be a hack to get a little bit more shredded, you know. That's when you're going to hear about all those things. But that's my why, is the prep is hard. It's arguably, I mean, I've consulted with Navy SEALs who've gone through BUDS. And BUDS is arguably the hardest thing that a person can go through. I mean, bones break. You know, we've heard about Dan Crenshaw and his broken leg the first time that he went through it. They're trying to get you to quit. They're trying to get you to ring that bell every single day. And they said that bodybuilding prep to like minimalist levels of body fat is harder than going through BUDS. Because in BUDS, they're going to feed you. You're going to get your 3 square meals a day. You could eat all you want. You know, it's not the case, you know, with bodybuilding prep. And it's that hurt that Brad wants and kind of needs. Now I'm going to pace myself. I'm going to do it smart.
Is it the hurt or the challenge?
Both. It's both.
Is it the hurt or the challenge?
It's both. Because the hurt's kind of the purifying part, but it's the challenge that precedes that. You know what I mean? Knowing full well all of this stuff that I'm going to be getting into, you know, that's really kind of what I'm after. If I get on stage, great. You know, if I get up there and I'm arguably my most conditioned ever, great, you know. But that's kind of my why right now is it's kind of that I want to do that hard thing. How about you, Berto?
Man,
put you on the spot.
Well, I think generally, like, bodybuilding is the best form of self-care that I know for myself. And it's crazy. It's like the less you get from a, I guess, just bottom line bodybuilding perspective, like putting on muscle, seeing changes in your physique, like the more that warrants you pulling out other elements of yourself, like whether it be to get rid of them or use that power you have inside you for good. And prep is like the most, I guess, elevated version of that for me. And I mean, you only have so much time in this planet. So it's like, well, you got to pick something and you got to go like deep in that hole with that, I feel. So like whenever, I love listening to people who have been, like, something's been their world for like most of their lives. Like there's certain scientists. I'm really into Miyamoto Musashi. Like whenever I read his books, I'm like, bro, it's like I'm not there, but I'm getting there. I know what you're talking about. He's got this one quote that's something along the lines of like, basically the way you view the rest of the world through the lens of like your mastery of that one thing you do. So like to me, every time I go in there, it's like some feathers on the cap, man. There's just it makes me a better person on the other end because I can push so hard at this point because you just have to get deeper in yourself in order to push to like those new places. And yeah, it makes my life better. Like there's no other way of putting it. It makes me a better person. So, like my body, if it gives up, it gives up. But like the mental part, even when I'm on my decline, I get to that point where it's like, bro, he's lost a few steps at this point. Like I still think there's elements of me in this world that I need to dig deeper into. And the only way I know how to do that really is through bodybuilding. So yeah, that's the main reason. Every time I come out of a prep in some way, yeah, I'm battered, I'm beaten, it gets hard, but it's like, man, we learned some things. If I remember these lessons, I will come out a better person on the other end.
Wow, we almost got a little bit spiritual there, Berto.
It definitely is that. It definitely is that, and there's so many times when like I don't know what to do when it comes to life's occurrences, and I'm like, all right, whatever it might be, like put myself into the sea. I approach this like if this were you as a more novice athlete, right? So let's just say I'm trying to figure out something when it comes to house maintenance, right? Like the novice, like how do they view a YouTube tutorial? It's like, can I just get to the good part? Let me skip all these things. I just want to get to that thing I want to know. And like for us, we're like, you might be missing out on a lot of things here. Maybe it's best to just like take your time, do it right, learn it all the way. And yeah, so whenever I do something new, like I put on that hat, like because when it comes to this, it's like we've ascended to certain levels. So with like fatherhood on the way, it's kind of the same thing. It's something where it's like, okay, I've been a good father to my bodybuilding. Like I need to take care of this situation the way I would tell, knowing what I know about myself, telling myself like taking a similar strategy, a similar pace, being aware of the same things when it comes to this new situation that's presenting itself. And that's why it's important. Master one thing, and it's going to help you expedite the learning curve in a good way when it comes to anything else that might come up in life.
Wise words, my friend. Wise words. All right, you guys. I've got everything on my list checked off here. Jeff, you got anything to add?
I just like being extreme. It's an extreme sport, but it's interesting is I don't think out of my now 30-year competitive career, my 38 years of training, like the last couple of months, I've been accused of taking drugs more than at any time over my career.
Let's go.
And it's the fact because I am 52. I did something that not too many accomplish, and that's going to a top 5 at one of the hardest natural bodybuilding shows on the planet. It's rare. So there's going to be a lot of skepticism around that. But I kind of take it as like compliment because it's taken me 30 years to master where I'm at now. It's you going through like the experience of nicking my elbow, because I didn't know about nutrition. It forced me to educate myself so I don't repeat the same thing over again. So every time I go through a prep, I always learn something about myself or learn more about the process. And that translates into my coaching. And I even like today I had an athlete, first check-in of the year and all that. He's prepping. And I said, hey man, I might be right there with you. And they got so excited because I'm in the trenches with them. And I think that's important. Like, whenever I'm making an adjustment for an athlete, like it's good to kind of know, like, I've done this to myself. I've done this. I've experienced this. So it's a good thing knowing that I'm still in the trenches, and that's the best way I know how to educate myself is actually like getting my hands dirty. So it's a big why I want to just keep prepping, because the older you get, the harder it gets. It's challenging. Like, it's a new body in a sense, and that to me is exciting. Like, can I master? That's why I titled this year for me Project 5324. 53 is my age, 24 is the year. So I'm like, okay, let me master this project. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to continue to be extreme. I'm gonna leave it there.
Guys, you guys put the bow on top of that package for me. I'm not even going to try to expand on that. I'm just going to thank you guys for being here with me today. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for the love of the sport and the love of who we are. And until next time, 3DMJ, we'll see ya.
What's going on, everybody? Eric Helms here, Chief Science Officer of 3DMJ. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and let me just take 1 second to tell you about MASS, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport. This is a monthly research review that I do with Lauren Colenso-Semple, Eric Trexler, as well as Mike Zerdos. These are experts in their field, and we cover all the information relevant to you as an athlete or coach if you're working with strength or physique athletes, or if you're a recreational or competitive athlete yourself. We cover nutrition, training, sports psychology, and health. And we do this in written format, as well as, since you like the podcast, audio summaries, as well as video concept reviews. If you're a trainer, we also have continuing education credits for ACSM, NSCA, NASM, and ACE. So head over to 3dmusclejourney.com, click on the products tab, and you can find us there. I look forward to seeing you, and enjoy the podcast.